The game I played against Daniel Naroditsky. I started with e4, and then he played the Sicilian defense. Now, I already tell you guys how to play against the Sicilian defense. You always want to develop your knight and then play pawn to d4, putting a pawn in the center of the board. Now, at this time of play, I already played Hikaru Nakamura, lost, and my rating went down from 2600 to 2593, and Daniel's rating is 3061. Now, he took the pawn, I take back, and then he plays pawn to e5. Now, this is called the Kalashnikov variation of the Sicilian defense. It's a very aggressive way to play with the black pieces. However, there is a drawback to this line. If you notice, the d6 square, and I want you guys to pay attention to this because it's going to come up later on in the video. The d6 square becomes weak because the pawn is no longer guarding d6, and the d5 square is also weak because there's no pawn that is able to guard that square. With that being said, I did not take the knight on c6 because for one, to take is a mistake, and two, if I take the knight, he takes back with the pawn, and then his pawn will be able to move to d5, and then black will have the advantage. Instead, what I did, I played the move knight to b5. Instead of taking the knight, I apply as much pressure to this weak d6 square as possible. And he decided to play pawn to a6, chasing away my knight, but then I played knight to d6, checking his king. Now keep in mind, if he moves the king, he loses the game, so he had to take my knight on d6, and then after queen takes d6, he plays queen to e7. Now, the only downside, if I should say, of my position is the fact that I still need to finish my development. So I wanted to ensure that I develop my pieces as quickly as possible. Now, the main line in this position is to pull the queen back to d1, followed by knight c3, but it could get a bit too complicated. So what I did, I traded the queens off the board, and he plays king takes e7, which is crazy. I want you guys to look on the evaluation bar. That's a mistake because it would have better for him to play knight takes e7. If he plays knight takes e7, he's developing his knight. Now that he plays king takes e7, his king is vulnerable on e7, and he still has to waste another move to develop his knight. So what did I do? I played knight to c3, simply following development. Now look on Daniel's position. b6 is weak because it can't be guarded by another pawn. d6 is weak because it can't be guarded by another pawn. d5 is also weak because it can't be guarded by another pawn. He decided to play pawn to d6, and he didn't even try to defend the d5 square. So what did I do? I hit him with knight d5. White is better in this position. Now, he moves his king to f8, and then I play the move bishop to g5. I'm not gonna lie, bishop to g5 is a nice move. I don't know what I was thinking when I played bishop to g5. Usually we don't play moves like bishop to g5. I just wanted to castle my king as quickly as possible. And I was okay with the fact that, okay, if he plays a move like pawn to h6 and attack my bishop, I actually don't need to move my bishop. I can hit him with a move like knight v6 and then hit the rook and then move my bishop, castle my king, attack his weak d6 pawn, knight c4, attack d6. I felt good against Daniel here. So he plays bishop to e6, and then I castled my king. My king is now safe. His king is not castled. We're in the end game, so castling is not the biggest thing in the world, but there are still three minor pieces on the board. So he plays rook to c8, which was a mistake, by the way. Like, if you look on the evaluation bar, yes, he's putting his rook on the same line as my king, but the b6 square is weak. So what did I do? I played knight to b6, controlling the weak square, hitting the rook. Now my rook is targeting this weak pawn on d6, but after he plays rook to d8, I played bishop to c4. Now, bishop to c4 was actually the best move. Again, like, I don't know if I tell you guys this a lot, but I'm actually not a terrible chess player. But the reason why I'm not as good as I think I should be is like sometimes my nerves get into the way. So I'm playing against Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky. I thought that was not a free pawn. If I was playing against any one of you guys, I would have took that pawn. Bishop c4 was the best move though. And then he plays pawn to h6, and then I took on e6. Please do not roast me in the comments. Please do not roast me in the comment. I was very nervous. I did not know it would be possible for me to have a winning position against Daniel Naroditsky. So he took my bishop on g5, and yes, I played bishop back to b3. you can have a look on the evaluation bar. I'm not going to tell you guys the move that I missed, so that way, if a beginner is watching this, they're not going to be able to see. So after I missed that move, he plays rook to d8. Now he's guarding his pawn on d6, and then I played rook to d2 because I'm like, okay, it was actually a free pawn. So I'm now going to simply double up my rook on the d file and win this pawn. But then he plays knight to f6. And then now I'm like, hmm, if I double up my rook and apply a lot of pressure to this pawn, I'm going to lose my pawn on h2. So what did I do? I played pawn to h3. I didn't even look on the guy's last move. I was so into my head. It's crazy. So he plays knight to f6. And I want you guys to keep in mind, I have the game live. So right after I finished analyzing the game, you can actually watch the game live to see how I was reacting. So I played h3. I should have guarded my pawn. So the evaluation bar went down. And black is actually better in this position. So he took the free pawn. I moved my rook out the way. I'm attacking the knight. And then after he moves the knight, I played rook to d1 and not all my pieces are in the game. The issue is black is ahead by a pawn. So if you actually watch the game that I was playing, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get serious now and I'm gonna beat this guy. So it was at this point where I decided to really lock in. And then he played king to e7. And then I was like, okay, knight to d5, his d5 square is weak. I'm gonna start my attack. And the evaluation bar is still low, by the way, but then he plays king to d7. I checked him again. I didn't really mind a draw in this position, by the way. It's it's Naroditsky, like, come on. So, but keep in mind, I'm checking his king. My bishop on b3 is targeting this pawn on f7. So this is actually a discovered attack. He played king to c7. I checked him again. He plays king to b8, and then I pull my knight back to e3 because I was like, okay, he does not want a draw. I'm going to target this pawn on f7. And folks, Daniel Naroditsky plays rook to e8, missing the fact that I was attacking this pawn. And just like that, I took the pawn and I'm backing the king. Now, here's how I dealt with this position. Keep in mind, the guy has two weak pawns here. The guy has a backward pawn here. This is weak. This is weak. He moves the rook out the way. I pull my bishop back to d5, controlling those weaknesses, and then he plays knight to d4. Now, this is one of the best chess players in the world. He's also Russian. He is attacking my rook. I move my rook out the way. The evaluation bar is now saying the position is equal, and then he played the move knight to f5. Now, remember what I tell you guys about chess, and I really want you guys to listen to what I'm about to say. End games is just so crucial in chess. You could be 700 on chess.com, and then you learn a new opening, and it get you to 800, and you think you achieved something. But if you're 700 or just any rating, I'm not calling out 700 rated player, and you get better at the end game, that could actually double the amount of ratings that you have. But let me show you guys how I play the end game. First I took, and then he took. The plan in the end game is this. You want to attack weak pawns, push past pawns, activate the king. If the moves that you play in the end game did not do one of those three things, do not play the move. What did I do? I played pawn to f3. I didn't attack a pawn, push a pawn, or create a pass pawn or activate my king, but f3 is a decent move because it ensures that his rook is not attacking my pawn. So obviously, if you do the invert, then it's also good. So if instead of activating your king, you prevent the opponent from activating their king, it's also good. He plays pawn to e4. Have a look on the evaluation bar. And I was not really calculating at this point. I went into my head again. Now, all I needed to do was just take the pawn on e4. The guy has one piece is guarding e4. I have two pieces guarding e4. Just needed to take the free pawn. And if his knight takes, I takes. If his rook goes here, I grab, he grabs, I grabs, he grabs. And just like this, I'm ahead by a pawn. I did not take on e4 because I thought Naroditsky played e4, so it was a decent move. So I was like, you know what? b4. Hit him with b4. Chase the knight away that is guarding e4, so that way I can win the pawn for free. But then he plays pawn to e3. Have a look on the evaluation bar. After he played knight to e3, I played rook to d4. Now the bar went back down. What I needed to do in this position, though, was just play rook to e2. I'm attacking his knight. He has to move the knight. And then once he moves the knight to somewhere I don't know, I take the pawn and then I'm winning. But what did I play? I played rook to d4. He plays e2, and then I played rook to e1. I'm still attacking his knight though. So he plays rook to e5 to guard his fast pawn, but then his knight is left hanging. That's not a free knight, by the way, guys, because once I take the knight, his pawn takes, and then both of his rooks are attacking my bishop, and the pawn is attacking my rook. So I have to move my rook. But pay attention to what is happening on the queen side. I have three pawns. He has two pawns. This is called a pawn majority. No, I move my rook, just trying to trade the rooks off the board. He took the bishop, I took the pawn, and then he plays rook to d6. Now, one thing that I tell you guys about the endgame is rooks belong on the seventh. Rooks in the seventh is in heaven. So I put my rook on the seventh. He plays pawn to g6, and then after pawn to g6, I just took the free pawn. Now, what he needed to play in this position was rook to d7. But then, if he had played that move, I would have takes, and then hit him with rook to e5. In the end game, you should attack with pawns. So after he played b6, yes, I took the pawn. He pulled his rook back, and honestly, I'm just seeing that that's a free pawn. I'm just seeing that, to be honest. Like, I was so excited at this point. I played rook to e7, and I was like, let me get the rooks off the board. Takes, rook to d5. Now, how did I continue in this position? We're in the end game. I'm ahead by a pawn against Grandmaster Naroditsky. My rook is cutting off his king, and then I play the move pawn to g3. Why did I play pawn to g3? Because I'm advancing my pawn majority. If you can do mathematics, if I have three pawns and he has one pawn, 3 minus 1 is 2, which means if I'm able to trade the pawns, I'm going to be left with two pawns. And that was my plan. He played rook to d4. I played rook to f7 just to ensure that I keep this pawn guarded. And then he plays rook to d5. Now, it looks as if he's trying to repeat the position, but I'm like, hey, I'm about to beat Daniel Naroditsky. Let's play pawn to f4. Let's push our pawn majority. And then after he takes, did I take with the pawn or did I take with the rook? I took with the rook. And the reason why I took with the rook is because having connected pass pawns in the endgame is just a winning plan. Now it's just a cakewalk from here. He moves his rook, pass pawns must be pushed. He moves his rook again, pass pawns must be pushed. Moves the rook, pass pawns must be pushed. He moves his king, activate the king. Moves his rook, activate the king. Check my king, activate the king. Moves his rook, pass pawns must be pushed. So all I'm doing here is just advancing my connected pawns. Attacks my pawn, activate the king. Moves his rook, pass pawns must be pushed. Move his rook, pass pawns must be pushed. And then he plays rook to h2. I'm completely winning in this position. I played king to g5. It would have been better to play pawn to h2, but I didn't really want to risk anything. And then he moves his king. I push the pawn. He checks. I move my king. And then at this point, I'm just forcing the rooks off the board. It's over. And then after the trades, I promote to a queen. And then from here, it's just over. However, at this point in the game, I gave a check. Why did I give a check there? Why didn't he take? Because I had no time on the board and I lost on time. Now you can see the actual game in real time. I'm playing Naroditsky. What the heck? Yo, okay. We have to be fast. I can definitely beat this guy. I can definitely beat Naroditsky. Oh boy. Did I just miss a four? That was my chance, man. Alright, let's focus. Let's focus. Check. Check. That's a pawn. Just focus, bro. Just focus, bro. What's this? What's this? What the hell is this, man? Okay, where does he put the knight? Okay, he sacked the knight. Takes. Oh, no, no, no. Okay, I'm just gonna go here. Grab this. Not losing to Naroditsky now. Pass pawns. Pass pawn. Pass pawns.